Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about something that's been misunderstood for far too long: niceness. We're told from a young age, just be nice and everything will work out. But I'm here to tell you that if your strategy for success with women, or in life for that matter, is simply to be nice, you're setting yourself up for failure. Niceness is not strength. It is often a shield for fear, a defense mechanism against rejection, conflict, and discomfort. A man who is merely nice is a man who has surrendered his own power in favor of social acceptance. He is not driven by conviction, but by the need for approval. He does not stand firm in his beliefs. He bends, he appeases, he conforms. And in that conformity, he loses his identity. A man who is only nice is not respected. He is tolerated. He exists in the background, blending into the sea of those too afraid to assert themselves. He waits for validation instead of creating it. He tiptoes through life, hoping that by avoiding offense, he will be rewarded with acceptance. But acceptance is not given to those who lack substance. It is given to those who carry themselves with certainty, with direction, with an unshakable foundation. Niceness is mistaken for morality, but morality is not passive. It does not hide behind polite smiles or agreeable nods. True morality is rooted in strength, the strength to do what is right, not what is easy. A man who is afraid of saying no, of drawing boundaries, of standing his ground is not a good man. He is a weak man. And weakness does not command admiration, it invites exploitation. The world does not reward those who shrink themselves. It does not respect those who cower in the face of confrontation. Those who merely aim to please are not seen as valuable, they are seen as expendable. They exist to serve the interests of others, not because they are respected, but because they are convenient. And convenience is never admired. It is used, then discarded. A man who avoids conflict is not peaceful, he is afraid. He tells himself that by being agreeable, he is building harmony, but in reality, he is surrendering his own authority. He is betraying his own needs, his own desires, his own sense of self. And in doing so, he becomes invisible. A man who refuses to stand up for himself will never be truly seen. He will never be taken seriously. He will never leave an impact. Power is not found in avoidance. It is found in the ability to face difficulty head on, to confront discomfort, to be unwavering in the presence of opposition. Strength is not about aggression. It is about the ability to act when action is required. It is about having the capacity for power, yet keeping it under control. A man who has no capacity for strength is not virtuous. He is simply harmless. And there is no nobility in harmlessness. People admire those who have the ability to dominate but choose not to. A man who is capable of great force but exercises restraint is far more respected than a man who has no force to begin with. Niceness without the presence of strength is not admirable. It is empty. A man must be capable before he can be compassionate. He must have power before he can wield it responsibly. Without power, niceness is nothing more than an act of survival. A man who only seeks to please is a man who does not believe in his own worth. He believes that in order to be accepted, he must prove himself through submission, through agreement, through relentless accommodation. But a man who respects himself does not seek validation. But he does not beg for approval. He does not hand over his dignity in exchange for acceptance. He moves through the world with certainty, knowing that his value is not dependent on the approval of others. The uncomfortable truth is that people test boundaries. They push to see where the limits are. They do not respect those who allow themselves to be walked over. A man who never pushes back, who never asserts himself, who never makes it clear where he stands, will never be seen as strong. And strength is the foundation of respect. A man who is only nice becomes forgettable. He blends into the background, indistinguishable from the countless others who have failed to stand for something. But a man who is grounded in his own values, who is unafraid to take up space, to make his voice heard, to act with conviction, he is remembered. He leaves an imprint on the world. He does not chase approval, yet it follows him. He does not seek admiration, yet he earns it. A man who is too agreeable is a man who has not yet realized his own potential. He has not yet discovered that true respect is born from competence, from action, from the ability to make difficult choices. He has not yet grasped that people do not admire those who fade into the background. They admire those who have the courage to stand apart. When a man operates solely from a place of niceness, he sacrifices his own growth. He suppresses his instincts. He silences his own voice. He becomes a reflection of what he thinks others want him to be rather than an expression of who he truly is. And in doing so, he loses himself. Niceness will not shield a man from hardship. It will not protect him from rejection. It will not earn him the life he desires. The world is not moved by those who simply aim to be liked. It is moved by those who dare to take risks, to speak with conviction, to act with purpose. Niceness alone will never be enough. It is not a substitute for competence. It is not a replacement for courage. It is not a path to greatness. A man must be capable of more. He must be willing to do what is difficult. He must embrace the discomfort of standing firm. He must understand that true respect is never given freely, it is earned. Women are not drawn to men who exist only to please. They are not moved by those who shrink themselves to avoid disagreement. They do not admire those who lack conviction, who hesitate, who ask permission to exist. A man who is desperate for approval does not inspire admiration. He repels it. He is tolerated but never respected. He is noticed but never truly desired. Attraction is not built on obedience. A man who always agrees, who always yields, who never asserts his own will is not seen as admirable, he is seen as weak. Women may say they want a nice guy, but what they truly crave is a man who possesses strength, who has a presence that cannot be ignored. A man who follows rather than leads is not a man who commands respect. He is not someone to be admired, to be challenged by, to be fascinated with. He is predictable, and predictability breeds indifference. A man who avoids conflict, who refuses to take a stand, who fears upsetting others, is not a man who holds power in any relationship. He is an accessory, an afterthought, a placeholder. He exists within the parameters set by others, never stepping beyond them, never daring to establish his own. Women do not long for a man who disappears into the background. They long for a man who is present, who is undeniable, who owns his space in the world with confidence and certainty. When a man seeks approval above all else, he sacrifices his own identity, he filters his thoughts, softens his words, molds himself into whatever he believes will make him more likable. But in doing so, he loses the very thing that makes him compelling, his authenticity. A man who lacks authenticity lacks depth. A man who lacks depth lacks substance. And a man who lacks substance is quickly forgotten. Strength is not about dominance, but it is about presence. It is about carrying oneself with purpose, with direction, with the quiet certainty that you do not need to beg for validation. A man who knows his own worth does not chase approval. He does not shape himself to fit expectations. He stands firm in who he is, and in doing so, he naturally commands respect. Women are not drawn to uncertainty. They do not look to men who hesitate, who seek permission, who tread carefully in every interaction. Attraction is built on certainty, on the ability to take decisive action, on the confidence to make decisions without waiting for validation. A man who cannot make decisions is a man who cannot be trusted with responsibility. And a man who cannot be trusted with responsibility will never be seen as a leader. A man who prioritizes compliance over conviction is a man who has no direction of his own. He is a man who waits to be led rather than taking the lead. He is a man who avoids discomfort rather than embracing it. And a man who is afraid of discomfort is a man who will never grow, who will never push beyond his limits, who will never become more than he is today. When a man suppresses his own opinions, when he hides his true nature, when he bites his tongue rather than speaking his truth, he is not being kind, he is being weak. And weakness does not inspire admiration. It does not evoke desire. It does not earn respect. A man who is incapable of standing for something will always be seen as lesser than the man who does. Women are not drawn to submission. They are drawn to the man who challenges them, who pushes them to think, who refuses to be a mere echo of their thoughts. They do not want a mirror. They want a force. They want a man who can hold his own, who is not shaken by disagreement, who does not crumble under pressure. A man who is too afraid to speak his mind will never be a man who is truly valued. There is no strength in bending to every expectation. There is no respect in being endlessly accommodating. There is no admiration for the man who lives to please. Women are drawn to men who carry themselves with certainty, who are grounded in their own principles, who refuse to compromise their integrity for the sake of approval. A man who lacks direction is a man who is easily replaced. He does not stand out. He does not create impact. He does not leave a lasting impression. He exists in the periphery, never at the center, never the one who commands attention. Women do not remember the man who merely exists to agree. They remember the man who made them feel something real, who challenged them, who stood his ground with unwavering confidence. A man who does not believe in himself will never inspire belief in others. A man who is unsure of himself will never instill certainty in those around him. A man who hesitates, who waits to be told what to do, who lacks the ability to lead will never be seen as powerful. And power is at the core of attraction, not brute force, not control, but the quiet, unshakable power of a man who knows exactly who he is. Compliance is not connection, it does not foster respect, it does not build attraction. A man who thinks that simply being agreeable will earn him admiration does not understand human nature. Women do not admire men who fear them. They admire men who respect themselves. A man who respects himself does not chase validation. He does not shape his identity around the preferences of others. He does not fear disagreement because he understands that conflict is not the enemy, weakness is. And weakness is born from the inability to stand firm, from the fear of rejection, from the unwillingness to risk discomfort for the sake of truth. A man who does not set boundaries will never be valued. He will be used, manipulated, taken advantage of, but he will never be respected. Respect is given to those who demand it, not through force, but through the unwavering certainty that they will not accept less. Women do not respect men who allow themselves to be walked over. They respect men who establish limits, who hold themselves to high standards, who do not compromise their worth for the sake of fleeting approval. There is nothing compelling about a man who needs permission to be himself. There is no attraction in a man who is too afraid to take the lead. There is no desire for a man who does not know his own mind. Women do not want a man who exists only to serve. They want a man who exists with purpose, with drive, with a vision that extends beyond the need for validation. The men who leave the strongest impression are the men who do not seek to be liked. They seek to be respected. They seek to be challenged. They seek to push themselves beyond comfort, beyond fear, beyond the limits that hold others back. Women are drawn to men who inspire, who lead, who move with confidence and certainty. A man who hesitates is a man who is overlooked. A man who waits for permission is a man who is forgotten. A man who silences himself to avoid discomfort is a man who will never be truly desired. Women do not admire men who shrink. They admire men who rise. A man who looks outward for validation will always be at the mercy of others. He will never know true confidence because his worth is dictated by opinions that shift like the wind. He is fragile, easily broken by rejection, lost without approval, desperate for recognition that will never be enough. He does not live for himself. He lives as a reflection of what he believes others want him to be. And in doing so, he becomes nothing. A man who does not build himself first has nothing to offer. He is empty, devoid of substance, a shell waiting to be filled by the expectations of others. He wonders why he is overlooked, why he is not valued, why he is not respected. But respect is not given to those who seek it, it is given to those who command it. And command is impossible without competence. A man who is weak, undisciplined, and directionless will never earn admiration, no matter how much he craves it. The world does not care for the man who waits. It does not reward passivity. It does not elevate those who refuse to take responsibility for their own potential. A man who drifts through life, avoiding hardship, rejecting growth, making excuses for his mediocrity, is a man who will be forgotten. No one looks to him for leadership. No one sees him as valuable. No one respects the man who cannot respect himself enough to demand more from his own existence. A man who lacks purpose is a man who is easily discarded. He does not move with intent. He does not stand with conviction. He does not inspire confidence. He follows the path of least resistance, avoiding difficulty, embracing comfort, hoping that by simply existing, he will be rewarded. But existence is not enough. A man must become something greater than himself. He must forge himself into someone worthy of admiration, not through words, but through action, through discipline, through relentless self-improvement. A weak man believes that being liked is the key to success. A strong man understands that being capable is the foundation of respect. No one admires the man who is agreeable but ineffective. No one is drawn to the man who is kind but incompetent. Kindness is meaningless if it is not backed by strength. Niceness without backbone is nothing more than an invitation to be overlooked. A man who seeks validation through others will never find it in himself. He will be trapped in an endless cycle of seeking approval, bending to expectations, sacrificing his own potential for the comfort of acceptance. But acceptance is meaningless if it is given to a version of himself that is not real. A man who does not know himself, who does not develop himself, who does not push beyond his weaknesses, will never be respected. He will be tolerated at best and discarded at worst. A man must become worthy of admiration before he seeks it. He must cultivate his mind, sharpen his skills, forge his body into something capable and strong. He must develop the discipline to control his impulses, the wisdom to navigate the world with clarity, the resilience to withstand hardship without breaking. If he does not, he will always be at the mercy of those who are stronger, smarter, and more driven than he is, and in that world he will always lose. The foundation of confidence is competence. The more a man masters himself, the less he depends on external validation. The more he builds, the less he begs. The more he achieves, the less he fears rejection. The man who knows he is valuable does not chase approval, he attracts it. He does not plead for respect, he earns it. He does not seek permission, he acts. And that is the difference between a man who is admired and a man who is ignored. A man who refuses to grow will always be weak. He will wonder why no one sees him, why no one desires him, why he is constantly overlooked. But he has done nothing to become worthy of attention. He has spent his life hiding from challenge, running from discomfort, avoiding the very struggle that would shape him into someone who cannot be ignored. He has chosen comfort over greatness, passivity over progress, mediocrity over mastery, and for that, he is invisible. Strength is built through challenge. A man who fears difficulty is a man who will never be strong. A man who avoids discipline is a man who will never be respected. A man who rejects responsibility is a man who will never lead. No one is drawn to the man who cannot control himself. No one admires the man who crumbles under pressure. No one is inspired by the man who waits for someone else to give him direction. A man must create himself, or he will be created by others. A weak man makes excuses. A strong man finds solutions. A weak man blames the world. A strong man takes responsibility. A weak man waits for opportunities. A strong man creates them. The difference between failure and success is not luck, it is discipline. It is the willingness to suffer, to sacrifice, to push through pain without looking for an easy way out. And that willingness is what separates those who are respected from those who are ignored. A man who does not challenge himself will never grow. He will remain stagnant, comfortable in his mediocrity, resentful of those who surpass him. He will look at successful men with jealousy, not understanding that the difference between them is not talent, not luck, but effort, consistency, and an unrelenting refusal to accept anything less than greatness. Weak men envy strong men because they are unwilling to do what is necessary to become them. A man who relies on others for validation is a man who will always be controlled. He will mold himself to fit expectations, afraid to step outside of the lines, terrified of standing alone. But greatness is not found in following the crowd. It is found in carving your own path, in taking risks, in embracing the struggle that others run from. A man who is unwilling to face difficulty will never know success. He will live his life in the shadow of those who dared to push beyond their limits. There is no respect for the man who does not respect himself. There is no admiration for the man who refuses to develop himself. There is no desire for the man who has nothing to offer. Women are not drawn to men who seek approval. They are drawn to men who are grounded, who are certain, who move through life with an unshakable confidence that comes from knowing they have earned their place. A man who has built himself does not beg for attention. He commands it. A man who waits for permission to be great will never be great. He will spend his life on the sidelines, watching others succeed, wondering why he was never chosen. But life does not choose for you. It does not hand you success. It does not gift you admiration. It does not grant you respect. These things are earned, fought for, built through discipline and relentless effort. A man who does not fight for his own potential will never reach it. The difference between a man who is respected and a man who is forgotten is simple. One chooses to build himself, the other chooses to remain the same. One embraces challenge, the other runs from it. One controls his life, the other is controlled by it. Strength is not given, it is earned. Respect is not granted, it is claimed. A man must develop himself first, or he will always be at the mercy of those who did. A man who places women above his own mission will always find himself lost. He will wonder why his devotion is not returned, why his sacrifices are not appreciated, why his endless efforts to please are met with indifference. But admiration is not given to the man who orbits another, it is given to the man who stands in his own gravity, who moves with purpose, who does not place his value in the hands of anyone else. A man who makes a woman his priority over his own growth is a man who has already failed. He is not respected because he does not respect himself. He is not desired because he does not desire more for himself. He is not admired because admiration is not given to those who abandon their own purpose in pursuit of approval. A man who seeks fulfillment through another has nothing of his own to offer. He is empty, waiting to be filled, desperate to be completed by someone who can sense his lack of substance. Women do not admire men who follow. They admire men who lead. They are drawn to the man who does not need permission to chase his ambitions, who does not hesitate in the face of resistance, who does not soften his edges for the sake of approval. A man who bends, who adjusts, who alters his own nature to accommodate the expectations of others is a man who loses himself. And a man who is lost will never be seen as strong. A man must build himself before he can build a relationship. A man who does not know where he is going cannot lead. A man who does not have a vision cannot inspire. A man who does not stand firm in his purpose cannot be relied upon. Women may seek companionship, but they do not long for a man who clings to them for direction. They do not admire the man who places them at the center of his existence while his own life remains unfulfilled. A man who chases women instead of success will always end up with neither. He places his time, his energy, his emotions into something that does not provide the foundation for his own greatness. He becomes dependent, waiting for affection, longing for validation, structuring his choices around the fleeting approval of another. But a man who builds, who creates, who moves forward with relentless drive does not need to chase, he attracts. And attraction is never given to the man who has abandoned his own path. The world does not respect those who beg for attention. It does not reward those who sacrifice their own ambitions in the hope of being chosen. It does not elevate those who make others their purpose instead of carving out their own. A man must be something before he can expect to be wanted. He must carry the weight of his own potential, must forge himself into something undeniable, must create value before he demands recognition. A man who is driven is a man who is noticed. He is not seeking approval because he does not need it. He does not compromise his time for trivial distractions because he understands the cost. He does not lose himself in pursuit of another because he knows that his path is his own, that his journey is what defines him, that his value is built in what he creates, not in how much he is liked. A man who builds is a man who commands respect because respect is given to those who make themselves undeniable. When a man centers his world around a woman, he becomes smaller. He makes himself secondary. He trades his own ambitions for the comfort of being needed, of being accepted, of being someone's choice. But a man who is chosen only because he is available is not truly wanted. He is convenient, not captivating. He is tolerated, not admired. He is there, but he is not essential. And a man who is not essential is a man who will always be forgotten. A man must establish his mission before he seeks companionship. He must know who he is, what he is willing to fight for, what he refuses to compromise on. He must have a foundation that is unshakable, a sense of self that does not waver with the shifting expectations of others. If he does not, he will always be adjusting, always be following, always be shaping himself to fit the mold of what someone else desires. And in doing so, he will never be truly seen. A man who leads his own life is a man who commands attention. He does not plead for it. He does not shape himself to be more likable. He does not abandon his own priorities to fit into the life of another. He is driven by something greater than approval. He is fueled by something deeper than the need to be wanted. He moves with purpose, and purpose is what separates those who are admired from those who are ignored. A weak man believes that love is given to those who give the most. A strong man understands that love is drawn to those who need it the least. The man who is independent, who is self-sufficient, who is complete in his own ambition is the man who never lacks admiration. He does not seek validation, and in doing so, he receives it. He does not beg for attention, and in doing so, he commands it. He is not desperate for approval, and in doing so, he earns respect without asking for it. A man who is obsessed with seeking affection loses the very qualities that make him attractive. He softens, he hesitates, he becomes fearful of risk, of challenge, of pushing against what is expected of him. He does not want to upset. He does not want to offend. He does not want to stand alone. But standing alone is what makes a man powerful. It is what sets him apart. It is what makes him irreplaceable. A man who fears standing apart will always be overlooked. There is no strength in neediness. There is no power in dependence. There is no admiration for the man who structures his life around another while neglecting his own. A man who builds his world upon the presence of someone else is a man who will crumble when that presence is gone. And nothing is more unattractive than a man who cannot stand on his own. A man who dedicates himself to his mission does not have to seek admiration. He earns it through his actions, through his accomplishments, through his unwavering commitment to something greater than himself. He does not lose himself in the pursuit of others. He does not surrender his time for meaningless distractions. He does not trade his ambition for the fleeting comfort of acceptance. He is relentless. And that relentlessness is what makes him stand apart. A man who leads will always be respected more than a man who follows. A man who builds will always be admired more than a man who waits. A man who stands on his own will always be desired more than a man who needs someone to complete him. Women do not long for the man who is available. They long for the man who is exceptional. And exceptional men do not chase, do not plead, do not bend. They rise, they conquer, they create, and the world follows. A man who lives for approval will never be respected. A man who seeks validation will never be admired. A man who abandons his own mission in pursuit of acceptance will never be truly desired. Strength is not given, it is built. Respect is not begged for, it is commanded. Admiration is not granted to those who wait, it is earned by those who act. Women are not drawn to men who exist to serve them. They are drawn to men who stand firm, who lead with confidence, who refuse to compromise their own purpose for the sake of fleeting affection. The man who follows is forgotten. The man who pleases is overlooked. The man who chases is dismissed. But the man who builds, who creates, who rises despite opposition, that man is remembered, that man is respected, that man is irreplaceable. Do not be the man who waits for permission. Do not be the man who softens himself for the comfort of others. Do not be the man who sacrifices his own potential for the illusion of security. Be the man who builds himself first. Be the man who stands alone if necessary. Be the man who leads with conviction, who embraces challenge, who does not need to be chosen because he chooses himself.